Hey, Aminah, how are you? How's it going?
I'm great. How are you, Mark?
I am doing amazing, and I'm so excited to get to connect with you today and learn a little bit more about your background and PaliRoots as a brand.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive deep into it, and I hope that anyone that's listening can, be inspired or find some valuable information, in regards to what I'm going to share. I think a lot of people keep gate the secrets of business, and I think you know, as a movement that we carry, throughout Pali Roots, I think it's something that we can share and be able to inspire other people to do things that they also love. So I hope that that's, the benefit that anyone who listens to it receives.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I can't wait to dive into your stories. So let's backtrack a little and let's talk about where did you grow up? Where are you from? Like how did you get started in entrepreneurship, or what were what's the backstory on Amina as a whole before you even got into PaliRoots?
Yeah, I was born in Jerusalem proudly. So I'm Palestinian, born in Jerusalem. And I grew up most of my life in Chicago and Cleveland, Ohio, until, my dad decided to take a spontaneous motorcycle trip to California. And after that, a week later, we packed up our bags and moved across the country. So
No way.
it was
So your dad took a motorcycle trip and he's like, "Hey, we're moving to Southern California now."
he came back.
That's
He
awesome.
was right in San Diego at the time, and he was like, "I need you guys to start packing your things. We're leaving." And we were like, "Really, right now? Like it's the middle of the school semester." I've moved 4 times in just my senior year, so I was just so used to the idea of moving and adapting quickly. And I feel like because my parents did that. It was so easy to implement also that type of strategy in my business or in my personal life to be able pivot and change and move and not be so stressed out about it. So I think my dad and my mom and dad trained us, to be that type of person without even really realizing it.
That's so cool. And how old were you when you moved to the States?
The thing is, I would say it was a miracle for me to be born in Jerusalem. I wasn't meant to be born there because I have
Yeah.
an older brother, Hussein, who is my business partner, that was
Yeah.
born and raised in Chicago. So at the time we were living in Chicago,
Okay.
but my mom went back to Palestine to celebrate her brother's wedding, and during that time she had me in this beautiful little home in Jerusalem. 1994. It was a good time.
That is such a cool story.
It is. It's really personal because one of the things that I get to share is kind of like bringing perspective to people who don't understand what's happening in Palestine. Because for me, the way that I view Palestine, it's hard to not be political about what's happening there. And one of the things that I say, just to have people understand, the injustices that are happening, is just the fact that I was born in Jerusalem and I can't visit. So if you were to, think about and reflect, what if I couldn't visit my birth city? How would that make you feel? It's easy to get someone to really understand what's happening there. But that's kind of like what we do with Pali Roots, and I'm so excited to dive into that. But you asked, how did I get into entrepreneurship and what kind of led me to go into this world of business? It's tough because you would think that I don't want to, have a 9 to 5. I don't want to do this, and then you end up working 24 hours, and you're like, "What is this? This is what I thought." Um, but there's so many perks of being your own business, to be your own entrepreneur and to run your own business. It's really a test of leadership and patience, and a lot of character building is needed in order to be an entrepreneur. And I think we have a lot of inspirational entrepreneur people on social media that are convincing people to start a business. And starting a company is probably the easiest part. The hardest part is scaling it, and I don't think people know that. It's like you can start your business, but once you scale it, either you lose all your money or you triple in your revenue. And you just have to be really, really resilient and fight against every task to get to where you want to be. And if you don't, the bottom is calling your name. so,
Totally. And I don't think a lot of people realize in e-commerce too, like how much money your business needs to be making for you to actually take home a salary.
yeah,
And even just a a humble salary, right? If you want to take together like a nice salary, a comfortable salary, the business really needs to be supporting a lot of revenue to be able to hit those numbers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. Especially in e-commerce because there's such a high burn rate. You know, your products cost money, your overhead costs money, your shipping fulfillment costs money. And then, you know, you have customers that tell you like, but it's an $8 shirt. Why are you, why are you marking it up for 60? I'm like, because there's other elements of the business that are needed. And, thankfully we don't have that problem within our demographic.
Marketing costs a lot of money. Everything.
Yeah, we don't have that problem within our demographic, which is great because people see the value of not just the product, but the movement and, all the elements of what makes PaliRoots what it is. And I think it's just really, really special.
That's so cool. And so let's hear, like, how did you actually get started with PaliRoots? What were you doing before, and how did the journey get you here?
Yeah, so I went to fashion school just to learn product development, technical design, and understanding how can I make an idea turn into a physical product. And at the time, I was so invested into menswear. I loved menswear, and this was before menswear for women was even a thing. So at the time I was in college, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna design a whole suit line. I'm gonna make unisex clothing, and have everybody be able to express, however they want, kind of making genderless clothing. And I think that was just because I personally couldn't find modest things in everyday fashion. Most of the women's line is like very cut short, very exposing, and I come from a background where modesty is valued, and I love, being a part of culture where modesty is valued to that extent. So I had a hard time when I wanted to make clothing that women like me who are not extremely modest, but it's just like there's like this sweet line that I wanted to accomplish. And I do see that within Pali Roots now is that a lot of the clothing is modest. It's very unisex. Like if I feel like all types of people are wearing it, and we're actually introducing a sister line into um, Pali Roots where it's going to be more fashion street end because we were operating more as like t-shirts and hoodies, and now it's entering into this
Yeah.
whole fashion line inspired by Palestinian culture and elements
Wow.
of the culture. So really excited for that. But I would say that entrepreneurship is something that I was raised with. My father was he was in medical school, which is why we moved around so much. We lived in Belize, in Saba, which is in the Caribbeans, and we were with him during the whole time he was
Oh,
in
wow.
medical school. And while he was matching into residency in the States, it was hard for him as a foreign medical graduate to call hundreds of program coordinators asking them for their requirements. And then he had this aha moment, and that's kind of when his brain turned into like being a medical student into an entrepreneur. He found a glitch in the system or something that he can create as a service to help people match into programs without having to call so many program coordinators. And he created his system and ended up quitting medical school, quitting residency, quitting being a doctor, and he just focused solely on this business, which has been so different for my family and I, because we grew up, you know, um, with very humble beginnings. My parents were just starting off. My grandparents were first generation immigrants. So they're immigrants. My parents are first generation, and I'm second generation. So just witnessing that line and seeing how hard my father had to work in order to get to where we are today, it's kind of like a privilege. I'm privileged to have my father to be an investor into the brand when we first started 6 years ago. Um, but in terms of like entrepreneurship, in regards to like being inspired by my dad, my brother is I think a genius. Hussein, my brother, he's my business partner. Never went to college a day, but he just seems to know everything. He reads everything. He watches YouTube videos all day and just tries to really understand. And he was working with my father since he was 15, hiring and onboarding employees for his company at the
Wow.
age of 15. And at the time, I was an artist. I was focused on fashion and design. But when entrepreneurship really hit me is when I was in college, and I was a really nitpicky perfect note taker in psychology. And I was writing all my notes, just typing them all out. And I would sell my notes on a website. And kids in my class would go and buy those notes. So during finals, my notes were being bought left and right. And then I was later kicked off the website. But at least it was right after finals week because a lot of the kids stopped showing up to class because my
Yeah.
notes were so perfect that it was easy for them to
Yeah.
go in and study and use my notes. And I loved writing things. Like I loved going to
Yeah.
classes. So that's the first time I was like, wow, how did I make $7,000 in just 2 days? And that was
Oh my
like,
God.
yeah, this was in college, and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I love
Yeah.
this. This is great. I want to understand it, and that's kind of like when it was like when I made my big check. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I made this much money. um, so that's kind of like where my entrepreneurship of like I want to build a business with my brother, have my father, be another partner, an investor into the brand, and then that's where the idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur came from. But PaliRoots itself has such a deep sentimental story that has nothing really to do with entrepreneurship. It just has to do with the love of being Palestinian.
I think that's amazing. And it's so cool is I feel like every entrepreneur for the most part has some type of side hustle or some type of story like that, like from what you just had, which was I was I was already going to class and putting together notes. Why don't I just sell them on this website, right? And to do something that's
Yeah, you could have sold them.
yeah, and to do something too that's so like the name Pali Roots, it's rooted into your culture and into who you are, and to be able to build a brand and a business not only about that culture but also with family, I think is incredible. So, how did you come up with the idea of Pali Roots? You're in school, you've made 7 grand off of selling your notes in 2 days. You're like on top of the world. You're like, this, I'm not, why would I take a day job? Right.
Yeah.
You know? So where did it go from here? Like, how did you end up being a fashion school student with this note taking side hustle to building this brand empire like you have?
Absolutely. I think when I was in fashion school, I really wanted to do menswear, and my brother at the time was like, I want to do business. Let's start a business together." And then my father, who is so proudly Palestinian, he said, "I really would love to see you guys do something around the idea of educating people about Palestine." And one of the things that my great grandfather has always told us is that I left my home at 15, went on a boat, traveled across the Atlantic Ocean, not just to give you guys a better life, but to also help our people back home. What can we build here to be able to sustain our loved ones at home? And not just family, but even just strangers that we don't know in Palestine. How can we help them during the occupation with the privileges that we have as Americans? And with that, we decided to launch PaliRoots to educate people about Palestine. I think there was like one or two brands that did exist already, but their branding was more so educating people about the occupation and the war, and that is so needed. But what was also needed is that love that was we wanted to spread within the culture as well, because either people will care about a movement because of the politics, or they care about it because they met a Palestinian and we're so connected to that person by their hospitality, their love. And that's usually what happens. A lot of the people who are a part of our community is like, I had Palestinian neighbors, or my best friend is Palestinian, or my husband or my wife is Palestinian. And I wanted to understand them more and get to know their culture, and then maybe find a meme that's relatable and then send it to them. And it's become a community page where the idea of being Palestinian is very prideful, and also to be a supporter of Palestinian people. You are Palestinian by heart. You don't have to be Palestinian by blood to be Palestinian, and that's kind of like our motto. Since we have such a diverse group of people. But the idea of the brand was just to give it a new perspective in the way that people saw Palestinians, and to humanize the Palestinians. Since with war, we kind of just normalize the idea of like these are just the casualties of war, and I don't think that mentality is ever okay. But the one way we could, psychologically break that is by showing them a different perspective to Palestinians, in hopes that they also would be inspired to either visit Palestine or to find a Palestinian friend, or to kind of want to, explore that side of such a beautiful and rich culture. And that's kind of where we grew from PaliRoots. But what I think makes PaliRoots special is not just the brand story or the clothing, it's the philanthropic, you know, um, sustainable program that we built within the brand. And that's called the PaliRoots Meal Program. And the PaliRoots Meal Program was inspired by us being second generation immigrants in America, and how we used to go to school early in the morning to receive meals that was provided by the government in the schools. And, that's when we had our little aha moment saying, like, why can't we create the same program in schools in Gaza and feed children in Gaza? And that's when we started finding NGOs that we wanted to work with, building the program, the photos, the transparency, the program coordinator. And then, it's been 3 years now since we've launched that program, and have donated over 3 million meals in
Oh
just
my
those 3 years.
God. 3 million meals.
Yeah, 3 million meals.
That is just incredible.
Yeah, it's
I love how I can tell, but without even asking you what's the mission statement of the business, that like you guys wake up every day to run a business that has meaning and purpose and has impact, right?
absolutely,
Like
yeah.
it's all great and to like be your own boss and to like make your own salary and to like be able to control and steer your own ship, but it's another thing when you wake up every day and you actually have meaning and purpose for why you're doing it. And I can tell that meaning and purpose.
You
Yeah.
don't feel like you're working.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't feel like you're working a day in your life.
That's awesome. So like this program started you said a few years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago, it's about 3 to 4 years ago today. I think we hit four.
Wow.
It's been a little crazy. I'm starting a second brand at this moment, so I'm like stuck between the two. I'm like,
Yeah.
where's my brain? Here or here? It's like when you have two sides of your brain, it's like your right side, your left side. Mine's like PaliRoots, and then Kawiya, which is the name of the second brand we're launching at the end of this year. So it's a little,
Yeah.
it's like this. But thank God for productivity tools, because that is the secret sauce to every business. If
I
you want to have a
couldn't
successful brand,
agree anymore. I would be
yeah.
lost if it wasn't for our internal systems and tools. I actually just I did a post on LinkedIn the other day that was like, here's a list of every single tool I use to run my business, and the first one was Basecamp, because it's like if we didn't have Basecamp, we wouldn't be able to operate and run anything. It's our whole
Exact.
office. Yeah. What do you guys, I'm curious, what's your top productivity tools?
Notion.
Notion.
Notion is just
Awesome.
magical.
Yeah,
We have all of our departments, everything
that's
is
great.
just so organized and perfect. And, we spent the last 3 years making it where it is today. And anytime I show a friend, our Notion board, they're like, what is all this stuff? I'm like, this is all of our brains in just one company. And, the thing is, when you think about business, there's the strategizing side of like what's the best move to make, and there's like a time span, like how fast can you get it done, and how effective can you execute it. Because I think what people do is they spend too much time trying to make a decision that it kills them, and they end up never doing it, or ends up being too complicated that it stresses a person out, and then they lose interest in the project.
Or they're trying to make it too perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people like our perfection is what kills like actual execution.
Exactly, exactly. So there's like, I think that's one side of it, is being able to make a decision, business decision, quick enough and the most efficient way. Kind of like, we know we need this in the company. Do we need this? Do we not? No, it's like you need to be really stern on what you need, write that down, and go for it. I think the other problem that people have in business too is that they do not know how to build systems. And systems are so important in a business. In the beginning, when you're a one man show, I get it. One woman and one man show, do whatever you want, like write things down. But when you introduce just even one employee, you need to build systems as much as you can, because that's actually what helps you get acquired. That's what makes your business even stronger. And that's what extends the longevity of your brand. If I were to not be here tomorrow, PaliRoots would continue to go on because my team are so organized, the systems are built, and we're constantly trying to make the systems better and be more efficient and add whatever it is needed to make everyone's department easier. Um, but I cannot, stress enough like the importance of systems and the importance of making decisions quick enough, and also being able to separate emotions and logic from your business. I think like for me, when I think about, oh my god, I have so much to do, business really is just how fast can you check things off of your checklist. So if you have a task, how fast can you do it and how efficient can you do it? That's all it is. It's just a whole bunch of tasks, and that you grow bigger, the faster you can get tasks done as fast as you can and as most efficient as you can. So for me, when I think about it, I'm like, I need to finish these tasks, and I can't stress myself about it. I can just only, you know, um, try to find more time to get these type of things done. And that was a book that I read recently. My god, I have to find the name of the book because this is the greatest book that I've read in my 28 years. But it basically talks about how your mind always has more capacity than what you think. If you think your life is going by too fast, you are telling yourself your life is going too fast or your day is going by too fast. If you feel like you can't take on that extra role in your job, you can. You just have to look at your schedule and be able to change a few things around in order to be more productive in the work that you do. But I think we all just give ourselves a little too much slack. There's like, you have to give yourself some slack, but not too much, because there's more than that we can do that than we think we actually can. It's just a matter of sitting down and being able to write everything that you're doing and making the time and space to get that done.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So I'm curious with speaking of like, productivity and operations and roles, like with you and your brother in, really operating and running this business, which one of you is the innovator and which one is like the integrator? Are you the innovator?
No, my brother is the innovator, 110%. Like I said, he is a genius, mashallah. Like he can think of anything and he's gonna get it done. And he's like, I know we're gonna do this. And at times like we do things and we're like, are you sure it's gonna be a good move? But there's so much trust that the whole team has in him and in his direction of where he wants to go with the company, that we just go for it. We're like, okay, let's go for it. So I mean, the meal program was majority built by him. I'm more of like the creative story. It's like, what is a story behind it? Really, it's kind of like almost as if my past self had a different job, I'd probably be a journalist or a detective, because I always tried to see like, what was the story behind this? Where did you get inspired by this? Like, and I'm such a storyteller. Like, I love stories, I love culture, I love like being able to have someone visualize the things that I'm telling them. So for him, he'd be like, I think it's cool to do a meal program. I'm like, oh yeah, kind of like what we had when we were kids. And he's like, yeah. And it would just bounce off of each other. And then like I add like the story side of it. He adds more of like, how can we make it logic? How can we make it sustainable? How can we make it more, meaningful for people to understand it, for them to really see their impact when they're buying from PaliRoots? Like, okay, I donated 4 meals for this order because I spent this, for every $25 we donate a meal. So they can actually see in their cart how many meals they're donating. And then we would send them emails updating them of like, your meals have been donated, here's all the photos and the videos that you need to see. And then we just give everybody reports of like the distributions that we do. But he's definitely the innovator. I'm the one that can distribute and get everything done. So we're like the yin and the yang. We
Yeah.
man it. We like, I do things that he doesn't want to do, and he does things that I don't want to do. So we bounce off of each other really, really well, which is, I feel like, almost rare nowadays because not many people partner up with their family and their siblings. But my parents really raised us on the idea of, if we're not here, you guys have each other's backs. So either you hug it out right now or you're both in trouble. So my parents would make us hug each other, even though we're so mad at each other. We're just like, we want
Yeah.
to rip each other's out. We would just hold them and like
Yeah.
curse each other out. But if it wasn't for our parents to instill so much love and family into our family dynamic, I wouldn't imagine being able to work with my siblings too. But if it wasn't for my parents, they've just raised us to be really incredible siblings to one another.
So cool. And like, I'm curious too with the dynamic in the business. Like, was your brother involved from the beginning?
Yep. Right from the start, as soon as I graduated from fashion school, he was like, move back from LA to San Diego. We're starting this thing. We got our little office, our little, like everything set up. So, my brother is actually the one that really pushed me to go into business because I didn't even know. I was just an artist. And he was like in the business aspect. Like he understood, he could see, and he knew that there's so much that we needed to learn. But we just never gave up. We just really, really kept pushing, even on days where we were packing for 6 hours and our backs were hurting and we didn't have money to get a massage. We didn't, and our parents would get mad at us that we were so addicted to working and really pursuing our dream. And we traveled and went to trade shows together. And we were 21, 22. So we were so young in the game. But we just knew that this is what we wanted to do. And we just loved our dynamic together. We're just two goofs just figuring it out together.
How long has PaliRoots been around for? What year did you guys start it in?
Since September of 2016.
Oh, wow.
So I think we just hit 6 years.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's been a long time.
Within the last 6 years, like, was there a time or a specific event that happened where you guys are like, oh my God, we found what works?
Yeah.
Like, was there, yeah, like an inflection point?
The thing is, you'll find things that work and you won't, and then sometimes those things that once worked doesn't work anymore. So it just really depends. And I think a lot of things in marketing with Facebook and Google and pixel tracking has kind of like gone. So it's been hard to track really where sales are coming from, and you just have to test a few things to figure it out. But in May of 2021, I'm sure the world witnessed what happened in Palestine, and and that was a really big uproar because our entire team took a shift and said, "This is the time that we need to really start educating people more about what's happening in Palestine, and then also trying to tap into growing our network of people so that they can also amplify Palestinian voices." So that's when we got connected to A-list celebrities, and we said, hey, please talk about this, share this. So we started creating infographics to help people share them and then educate those around them, because I think there was so much misinformation going around, obviously with the Zionist movement, and like it's just you don't know where you can get credible sources, and we tried to find it in a way that anyone could understand what was happening and how they can really support the Palestinians, by amplifying their voices, by donating into trustable sources and building programs to you know, build a strong infrastructure for these refugees living in Palestine. And while we started doing that, one of our posts went viral. We had almost 500,000 likes on it, thousands of comments. It had crazy impressions. And that one just circled everywhere. And that one was just a charity project that we launched that got 2 million donations in a month.
Wow.
So we were able to raise $2 million in a month, during the month of May. And we also ended up, a lot of people were attending rallies, and many of these people didn't have a place to buy Palestinian merch. So they bought out our entire store. And in doing so, they also donated meals. So
Oh my God.
that's really where all the donations and all the support really came in from. And we had, Bella Hadid wore our bandana during one of the protests, and then a magazine fashion cover, you know, um, took her photo and then said, "What is Bella Hadid wearing?" And one of those things was our bandana, and it sold out of our bandana in like 30 minutes. Our soap products sold out. It was just all gone. And the first thing I did, I told Hussein, I'm like, okay, there's a lot happening. Everything sold out. What is the best thing to do? And my brother, being the innovator, he's like, well, how fast can we get these products in? Let's just turn the entire store into a pre order, because we obviously still want people to be able to donate by shopping through the brand. So we turned our entire website into a pre order. And people were ordering without us having stock, and I'm there working on the back end, like ordering all the stuff, calling my suppliers. Man, I probably worked that week. I mean, I probably slept 3 hours every day that week.
Oh my God.
It was a really tough moment in my career, but it was so so beautiful. It was so funny, just like seeing how everything was playing, and just the fact that so much money was being donated was just the highlight of our year. It was wonderful. So we realized that infographics are really important and something we still put into the brand. So I would say that quality content over quantity is important. If you want more of your post to go viral, if you want more people to see your stuff, really think with your team, how can I make a post that's going to get a lot of people to want to support it and see? And that's kind of like what we're still instilling into our brand is creating content that is really high quality.
You know, it's so interesting, like hearing you explain how you guys built a brand that represents a culture, right? And and a group of people, because when there's so many brands I've always heard, like where it's like, um we're going to be the first Korean streetwear brand, right? Or like this specific high end, clothing brand for these people. But no one ever really connects with it. It's always an idea, but it's so unattainable, and it's someone's mission and vision. But I love I love what you guys have been able to create, because when I look at most cultures, like what's the one thing that most cultures wear when they're trying to represent themselves? Usually it's going to be it's usually going to be like soccer gear for the most part, right? You look at like my whole family's like, I'm first generation American too. Like my parents were born in Croatia. And when Croatians get together to celebrate, they all wear the national team's soccer gear, because that's the only thing that really is out there that represents them as a culture, right? And so I think what's incredible about what you guys have built, what you and your brother have built, is it's essentially a brand that represents the culture. That's it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all it is. And just using elements of our culture to build everyday wear, things that you can wear every day, and be able to look at them and feel connected to it. And I also feel like what you wear is an expression of who you are. And it creates conversation. So I bet if you were wearing a Croatian jersey, that someone else who is Croatian would be like, "Are you from Croatia? From where?" And now you created like this whole friendship just off of a shirt you were wearing. And that's the same thing that goes with PaliRoots, is that anytime I went to the gym the other day, I was wearing a shirt that says Palestine, very black and white. I was like, if you don't like me, you don't like me. It is what it is. And you get the occasional stares, from certain groups of people that are not necessarily fans of Palestinians or wanting to liberate Palestine. And but you do also get people who are like, I stand with you, love this. Where'd you get this? What does this mean? And then sometimes people who don't even know what's Palestine would maybe connect with a really cool styled hoodie that has the map, and they're like, what does the map mean? And you're like, oh, that's the map of Palestine. What's Palestine? Palestine's here. And now you're talking about this whole conversation around Palestine based off of just a shirt. And so we believe like what you wear is also a gateway into being able to talk about that certain subject. And that's why I think fashion is so important. It's much more than just coloring yourself. It's sentimental to you, and it's also going to connect you and create a gateway with other people as well. And that's just the power of fashion. I just think it's bigger than that we think.
It's a representation of who you are. Like it
Yeah,
tells, like what you wear and how you present yourself really showcases what type of person you are or who you want to be, which is so interesting
exactly.
about fashion. And it's also interesting too, like fashion is like one of those things that's it's it's never done. It's never finished. That's what I
Oh,
love about fashion.
yeah.
It's never finished. It's constantly changing.
Oh, yeah.
Very few people wear the same thing their whole lives, right? It's quite interesting. Yeah.
It is. It is. I mean, I think fashion will never die. It's an evolution. It will go back into, it would evolve, and it also evolve into old ideas as well. Because I think not everything in this world is new. Like it's somehow inspired by somewhere you've seen it, or you've dreamt about it, or you saw a pattern on a shadow, and there's just so many elements of inspiration. And I feel like humans are always going to be inspired by something around them. So I think everything's always going to evolve into new ideas and, uprooting things that, maybe their stories weren't highlighted well enough, which is something that we did actually this last week. Is we're working on a collaboration with a Black Joy brand, a Black liberation brand, and as a Palestinian joy brand, it is a perfect brand to work with. And we resurfaced a poem that was written by a Palestinian poet, Palestinian like resistance poet, and that poem was discovered by another poet. He was part of the Black Panther Party, and he translated that poem and published it on the Black Panther newspaper, and that poem went viral. But for years and years, no one knew that it was actually written by a Palestinian, which is so funny because I feel like, in today's world, if that ever happened, people would be like, "Oh, we gotta cancel," da, 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 da. and and the Palestinian poet was just like, this is this these words are not just for me. These words, if they felt any type of sentimental feelings for them and they felt like this was relatable, then I did my job as a person, as a human. Like, that is what poetry is for. It's not meant to be just claimed. It's something that should be, used to connect people together, because at the end of the day, when we're together, we're free together. And that's the name of the collection: Resist Together, Free Together. So we're resurfacing like a story, an idea, and bringing it into fashion, and then allowing that to be like that educational part is so important within PaliRoots, is that we want to educate people through the clothing that we're making and create a story out of it. It's not just like, here's a blank perfect shirt. It's like, no, how can we add more value to it? And I think stories are valuable, and research is valuable. And I think that's what makes PaliRoots quite challenging to run, is that we're so passionate about it that we're like, how can we free up a little bit of our time so we can build other concepts? um, that's really what it means to be an entrepreneur. It's not just to have one business, but to have different streams of avenue, different streams of income. And I just, when you're really invested into the story of a brand, it makes it a little challenging.
Well, it's so cool what you guys have built. Like I said, it when you think about community, culture, product, brand, vision, mission, so many of these things that so many people spend so many hours trying to fabricate and build from the ground up and aren't very good, you guys have been able to build through the most organic way possible. Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely that's just what love does. When you love something, you just put all your heart and energy into it. So, never do anything that you don't love. I think life is too short for that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So what's on the horizon with like where you guys are at right now? Where do you see Pali Roots and this new brand that you guys are starting like over the next, you know, 2, 3 to 5 years? You guys have been doing this now for what about what would it be?
5, 6 years.
5, 6 years? Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's so many different directions that we can go with the brand. And one of the things that we do before we decide which direction we're going to go in is that direction going to still keep the base of the brand strong, the pillars of the brand. So we decided with PaliRoots that, we have a really great and amazing team that we just want to get PaliRoots to be able to be self-operated, where not self-operated, but operated by a team. And then Hussein and I would just be overlooking things. Because I think Hussein and I, being innovators and being, knowing how to execute an idea is important. And the more that we can get, roles like product designers, set in the team, and all these things done, like, we wanted to be able to stabilize the brand. And in doing so, we want to open up this new e-commerce brand, stay in the e-commerce world, and start a jewelry brand. I personally am so connected to jewelry. I think jewelry is, again, meaningful. I think where jewelry has evolved to where it is today is not something I'm very fond of, because I think jewelry is meant to be passed through a lineage. I think jewelry should be more valued. So, for example, like jewelry, the oldest necklace or jewelry piece that was ever found was actually found in the Middle East, and it was made up of seashells. And these are things that people used to make to as a form of adornment, to color a person, to either show their social status, their culture, their marriage. Like there's just so much elements to what jewelry does to a person. And as a woman, I feel like jewelry is a self-expression of who I am and what I stand for. So I'm starting a brand that's going to be inspired by my ancestral jewelry, which is called Bedouin jewelry. And Bedouin basically means like nomads and travelers. So I want to also educate and build a community of empowered women who can learn from one another, build, bring on special guests to talk about what are things that you need to financially invest into, or hey, investing into jewelry is good, so instead of buying a piece for $30, maybe buy it for 60 and get the actual gold or get the actual sterling silver, so that if you need to in your life sell it, at least it's a form of investment. So we are trying to have women think a little smarter and building a community of kawiya women, which is what the word means. Kawiya means an empowered, strong.
And real jewelry versus this costume jewelry that we see a lot of on the market, right? Yeah.
Exactly. We see a lot of that type of jewelry, a lot of polished, clean cut, everything looks the same. And, I wouldn't start a jewelry brand unless I felt like I had a really strong story. And that's why I'm like, okay, I have a strong story. I have a strong message. I think this is going to work. And, through a lot of conversations I've had with a lot of my girlfriends and a lot of our friends, they're like, this is a wonderful idea. I think I've never seen anything like it before. And that's why we've been working so hard the last couple months, really designing the first line and knowing what materials we wanted to use, went back and forth. So I'm really excited for that. And I think that's going to take a majority of our time in the next year or two. But with PaliRoots, ultimately, where I see the brand is I would love to one day turn it into a nonprofit and allow it to continue to run itself and be able to donate as many meals as I possibly can. But of course, I'd have to also build my own family's generational wealth. We're trying to break our generational wealth and be able to have our future kids to be able to, build their own companies or be able to build an idea or a strategy, just give them more leverage than what we had as kids. But again, I wouldn't have it any other way. I loved my humble beginnings, and it's definitely made me a really strong leader, both my brother and I.
That's awesome. So what's that? Would you guys have a name for the new jewelry brand?
Yeah, the new jewelry brand is called Kawiya.
Korea. Very cool. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, what's the price point going to be with it?
That's a little tough. I'm working with my suppliers, so if my suppliers can give me a decent price point, I'm thinking about trying to manufacture locally here in the US if possible. If not, I have some amazing suppliers in India and in China who specialize in recycled gold, and they also recycle their water while they're working with this, like with the material. So it's really eco-friendly, and I definitely want to find a supplier that is eco-friendly, because if it's not, then it kind of stands against my personal morals of wanting to make things that's ethically made. Same with PaliRoots, we make sure everything's ethically made. The employees are well treated. Our employees are like sending us pictures of their vacations, and like they like my suppliers have become my friends. And it's like I know about their life, their kids, I know about their vacations. So it's nice to know that we're working with people with a really good company culture, rather than just saying hi, I need this. It's more like how's your day, how's your morning. It's just like this really beautiful conversation and connection you have with your suppliers, and that's something that I want to look for in a jewelry supplier as well.
And wow, like we've covered so much today. Like it's been so cool getting to connect with you, Amina, and getting to hear
Yeah.
about the story of the brand and kind of where you're branching off in the future. Um, what else would you want anyone else to know about you or the brand, or like how can people potentially get in touch with you, or can they follow you? Like, are you online at all or anything like that?
Yeah. So if anyone wants to reach out, I think email is the best way, but my email is on my Instagram. It's just the golden MUSECO. I tried to change it to like my own name, but a lot of people got upset. I've had that username for years. So they're like, don't change it. And I'm like, but it's not a reflection of me. But that's where you can find me. And if you have any business related questions, I'm more than happy to help and be able to support anyone in the idea, especially for women too. I want to see more women in the entrepreneurship industry. And I just think there's so much potential that women can have and the ideas that I hear from a lot of my friends. So I'm always here to help out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, it's been great getting to learn about you and the brand. And I can't wait to see the amazing things you guys are going to be able to do over the next 3 to 5 years.
Ah, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. And same to you, always.
Awesome. Thanks, Amina.
Of course, yeah.